Hello and welcome to Infinity. I'm Charlie Seraphin. For the next half hour, we're going to be talking about enlightened approaches to business management and what role business can play in bringing about world peace. Our guest is Don Carlson, co-founder and co-chairman of the Consolidated Capital Companies, a $3 billion real estate investment company. Don Carlson has organized several large peace symposia and recently presented, along with Madame Sadat and Linus Pauling, peace awards to children from 17 nations. The Children as Teachers of Peace Award. Don, when most people think of success in business, images of ruthless bottom line types, real hard-fisted, tough business guys come to mind. Is that a myth or is that reality?
Well, I think it's partly a myth and partly reality. I think there are dinosaurs that still run large organizations that operate that way, Charlie, but I think there are a lot of younger people and some older people that have a totally different approach today.
What is the difference? What changed those people who used to be dinosaurs? Obviously, there are some older people who are progressive, enlightened managers as well. What was the change in their life?
Well, I think a lot of it is just a change that has occurred in our society. Copra talks about the changing paradigm as an example where women are becoming much more of a force, a shift away from a patriarchal society. And I think that enlightened management understands that brilliant women can make contributions just as brilliant men can. So I think bringing women into management as an example is one of the factors that has softened some of the historically tough bottom-line oriented people.
Is enlightened management just a catchphrase? Obviously, anybody who runs a successful business is an enlightened manager because they made a lot of money.
No, I don't think that's correct. I think enlightened management really means an awareness that people are more than cogs in a machine. You probably read many years ago The Art of Loving by Erich Fromm, and one of his criticisms of the Industrial Revolution was that people were treated like cogs in a machine. And I think enlightened management understands that people perform better if they're treated as people.
Are the goals of enlightened management different from the traditional goals of business? That is to make money on the bottom line?
Well, I think every business in our society in the Western world, Charlie, has to operate on the principle that it must have profits. But I think most enlightened business people that I know understand that there's a responsibility to a variety of publics besides simply shareholders. One public, as an example, is your own employee base. And this is important. If you really want to have long-term bottom lines, you have to be aware of what really makes those profits, and it really is the people.
Are there some that would suggest that enlightened management, in fact, enhances the profitability of the company, that you can make more actual bottom-line profits by having a happier workforce?
Well, I've given workshops to organizations of presidents, and that has been my point. I can't absolutely prove it, of course, because this gets into areas that are not necessarily measurable, but I honestly do believe that the bottom-line profit, in a conventional sense, is enhanced by an attitude towards people that is more open, sharing, loving, caring, more aware of their needs.
Is this an Eastern philosophy that we are borrowing? We hear a lot about Japanese business in today's world.
Well, I think the Japanese have had an influence on, clearly when you look at some of the miracles that have occurred in the last 40 years, where companies like Toyota are now household words, Sony and a variety of other wonderful Japanese corporations, their success stories are legion, and I think we as business people have had to observe what they were doing and incorporate some of their better techniques into our own Western style.
Can we boil it down when we talk about enlightened management? Are there some very basic principles of enlightened management?
Well, I think it starts with a real awareness that every human being has something to contribute, and that one of the obligations of a corporation, a company, to its employees is to bring out the best in those employees. So the question really is, how does one go about that? I think the old authoritarian methods simply do not work very well in this new Aquarian age, and I think it starts with this awareness of people being more than cogs in a machine.
Does enlightened management function in harmony with organized labor, or are there some is there a need for more enlightenment in the organization of labor as well?
I think that's true. I think that clearly the union movement was an absolute necessary part of our growth as a nation, And I think that some of the unions are, in fact, modifying their position to get away from the pure confrontation with management. But I think both sides have to give a little bit and become more integrative in their approach to what is in everyone's best interest.
In Megatrends, John Naismith wrote something to the effect that we lose all of the rights that we enjoy in our society the minute we walk through the door at work. What do you think about that?
Well, I hope it's not true in our company. I was talking to a friend the other day and quite truthfully said that when someone comes into our company, we feel that that person has an absolute right to the ear of anyone else in the organization. And so I hope that we have a true democratic organization where everyone has a right to participate in the affairs of that company, and that they do not lose their rights as individuals when they walk through the doors of our company.
Your company perhaps one day will be considered more mainstream than it might be today, but some of the information that you sent regarding employee benefits, emergency loans, neck massages to reduce stress, a gymnasium, speakers forum, including some of the great thinkers of our time, not necessarily related to the specific area of business that you're involved in. Why do you do those things?
Well, again, I think it is in everyone's best interest, including our company. By that I mean that people that are happy, feel that the organization does in fact care about them, gives them an opportunity to grow. One of the things you didn't mention as an example, Charlie, is that we encourage people to continue to educate themselves both on and off the job. So our company pays 100% of the cost of anyone who wants to go on to get a degree or special courses that they feel would help them grow. And I think we do benefit by this. I've observed that if you want something done, find a busy person to do it, so that the fact that someone in our company may be working on an MBA in their spare time does not mean that they will not be able to do those jobs or those requirements of the job that will aid all of our long-term objectives.
Does that apply to someone, let's say, in bookkeeping and accounting who is going back for a degree in art or painting?
Absolutely.
Music?
We have people that have gotten MBAs and then gone back and worked on a degree in parapsychology or art or photography or whatever.
Is there a possibility that you can overdo that approach? Can you be too good to the employee?
Well, I suppose it's like raising a family, that it is theoretically possible to spoil your children if you do too much for them and do not encourage them to take responsibility for their own actions and their own growth. It could be overdone. I think we have a long ways to go, Charlie, before we get to that level, though.
Are the employees who are most responsive to this employees, I'm wondering whether or not there's a certain backlash from people who have grown up in a traditional authoritarian system and they demand a time clock and somebody to watch over them when they punch in and supervise their activities on a real regular basis. Do you have problems with people like that?
No, I don't think we end up with problems at middle management level down. Occasionally we will bring in someone as a department head from another organization, and that person's style of management may be somewhat in conflict with the overall organization that we've established. There the problems can occur because people in that person's department may resent a difference of style, and we usually can modify that person's style to be incorporated into a more humanistic approach.
Let's talk about some of the younger people that are coming up through management, middle management and upper management now, products of the 60s, which was a kind of an anti-establishment period for many people, and the 70s, which was a period of confusion, and the so-called me generation. Is there a fallout in business from the various social movements that we've observed in our recent past?
Well, I think in our organization we've had an interesting comment from a number of our upper middle management people that would be part of the 60s that you described. They feel like the 60s are coming alive again in our organization because they're not only encouraged to attend peace symposiums, become politically active again, irrespective of which party they back or whether it's a third party. And I think a lot of them feel this is a wonderful position to be in, to bring back their youth and allow them to not only work at a job they feel good about and can contribute to, but also to spend some time in areas that may have historically been frowned on by corporate America.
What about people who had formative years in the 50s, which many would now consider a sort of me generation, where people were very goal-oriented, very economically oriented. Do they have a problem fitting in?
Well, I would probably fall into that category myself, Charlie, and I think that most of them, in our organization at least, that fall into that age group have somewhat softened, as I have over the years, and while I think I still am appreciative of the great American capitalistic values, I do like to feel that everything we are doing adds to everyone's benefit. And I think most of my upper management colleagues feel the same way at this stage of the game.
How did it happen to you? Are you just that 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 or rare bird that went through some sort of transition, or is there something happening at all levels of society?
I personally believe it's happening at all levels of society. I think there really is a changing paradigm of how people perceive each other. And I think our company is not as unique as we like to think it is. There are a number of other corporations in America that operate very similarly to us, and I think that number is going to accelerate, kind of along the 100th monkey theory that you're probably familiar with.
Mm-hmm. The more people who are doing something at any given time, the more people who are likely to do it with ease.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned early on the growing, a change from a patriarchal society and the role of women that is changing. Would you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, I think it's an area that most thoughtful people are very aware of. As we're talking, women are demanding and getting more and more political power, economic power, social power, and I think it's absolutely appropriate. We probably have not gone anywhere near as far as we should in our own company, but we are encouraging at every level of upper management to look for those talented women that would like to be a part of corporate America in an organization that they could feel proud of. So we're working very hard to make this a reality.
Are there things that women can bring to the job that men absolutely can't?
Well, I wouldn't say that men absolutely can't, but I think that it is factually correct that women historically have been more collaborative, supportive, a little softer. And men have historically been more aggressive, more combative, more competitive. And I think that integrating those two extremes is a very positive thing, and I think women have the capacity to do that. Unfortunately, some women that have become very successful in business and in politics have really just taken on the role of men. And that's not really what I'm looking for, but some of them are extremely successful in doing things in a very aggressive, combative way. I have a lot of fun teasing some of them because I think that there is a need for them to soften, just as there's a need for some of my male colleagues to soften.
Is there an underlying or perhaps overt spiritual theme to enlightened management? Is there something going on besides just the management of people and the business of making money in a more enjoyable manner?
I think so, Charlie. I don't think it's in a traditional religious sense, though. Our organization, as an example, has virtually every religious faith and many non-religious people in the organization. So I think there is a movement towards a more spiritual approach at all levels of society, and I see it, of course, more clearly in my own organization, where people have, in fact, grown enormously in recent years, and I see it at all levels in our company and among a number of my friends in other organizations.
We mentioned Japan as a comparative standard a while back. Some of the Japanese businesses begin their workday and their business sessions with religious ceremonies as such. Is that a factor in your company, or
No.
do you see it as a possibility?
No, not at all. In fact, we encourage people to do what they want in that area, but we have encouraged employees, as an example, to take courses in relaxation and meditation, because I do think this helps to reduce stress, and I think a reality of living in the Western world, probably in the Eastern world also, is stress. And I think that things that we do, whether it be the massages that are given to people's necks and heads and shoulders, or meditation, is an appropriate use of one's time. So I think I would encourage some silence each day, but it's obviously not obligatory. A chance just to think and perhaps breathe a little bit.
On a previous Infinity program, we talked about architecture and structure as it relates to people's attitudes and ability to work. Is that a conscious movement within your company?
Very much so. We are in the process of getting ready to move next year to a new building, and everything from the lighting to the use of certain types of air conditioning, the openness of the building, the space, everything is being that we can conceive of is being taken into consideration to make this the most attractive and most pleasant work surroundings that we can create.
Could you give a specific example? Are there, in terms of lighting, the type of, are you using
Well,
ionization or?
I'm not a technician, but I know that we are spending an enormous amount of money on the lighting with the awareness that certain types of fluorescent lighting really does create a lot of problems for people, so that we are trying to take the very best technical knowledge that's available, Charlie, to reduce that problem.
And you have an exercise area within the facility?
Well, we do now, but we will have a much better one in the new building. We'll have racquetball courts for men and women, basketball court, a type of holistic health center that's incorporated into this.
It almost sounds as if a family away from home kind of concept, and I know that's one of the things that the Japanese have talked about a lot. Is that a conscious goal to make people become lifelong employees of the company?
No, in fact, well, we have a very low turnover of employees. When somebody leaves, we generally have a going away party, and some of our employees have done extremely well, and I'm very proud of them in setting up their own organizations and going into direct competition with us. But I think that to the extent that a person remains with us, we'd like them to feel they're part of a family. But it's not with the conscious goal of making that occur.
What about involvement of the external family? If you have, for example, a husband that works for you, is the wife are the wife and children involved at all in any kind of company activities?
Well, we do a number of things, from company picnics to special community projects. As an example, we had over 100 of our employees involved with the Special Olympics. A number of them had their spouses or boyfriends or girlfriends or children involved in that project also. We don't really encourage husbands and wives to work for our company, but a number of people have met on the job and are now married, and we're happy for them, and they're obviously both still there.
Do you try to get them in different departments?
Yes, I think that would be preferable. There's enough togetherness without having 24 hours a day.
One of the most important aspects of management or any leadership position is motivating people. We have talked about a lot of things that I suppose indirectly are all positive motivational factors. Are there other things that you do specifically in terms of motivation? I'm thinking again of the Japanese that have kind of chanting sessions and pep rallies and exercise sessions in the morning to kind of get everybody in the same.
We really haven't gone quite that far in those examples, but we encourage people to reach out from wherever they are. Again, I mentioned taking courses. For some of the people, we've encouraged them to go back to school and teach. So some years, a good number of the people in the University of California Extension courses as professors are employees of ours. I think that what I prefer from my own style is to encourage people to do what they would want to do. So some of the people are trustees of universities, others work with Old Snedeker College or handicapped children, doing projects of their own that give them a feeling of self-actualization in Maslow's terms.
You strike me as being a relaxed person, particularly for someone involved in a major corporate business setting in modern America where there are all kinds of tensions and pressures. The atmosphere that you've described at your company seems a peaceful one. Is there a larger application of this whole approach in terms of worldwide peace?
Well, I think so, Charlie. I think it's all related, that each of us, in a way, to the extent that we can be peaceful with ourselves, with our family, with our friends, with our colleagues, and even with our competitors, I think adds a great deal towards the goal of world peace, which is one of my particular personal interests.
How does that work?
Well, I don't know that I can describe it in a scientific way, but just an example was you observed that I seem fairly calm and peaceful. You seem more calm and peaceful now than you did when I first met you a few minutes ago.
It's infinity. It does it to all of us. Is there the possibility that this peacefulness is counterproductive in terms of business, is counterproductive in terms of, I guess I'm thinking of the peace through strength argument, the success through strength and harshness argument in business?
Well, I think it has the potential. I'm not personally a Buddhist, and I think if our people sat around meditating 8 hours a day and did nothing else, this would be probably very counterproductive. But my personal belief is that people that feel good about themselves tend to feel good about others, and tend to feel good about their work. See, I don't think that the word workaholic is necessarily a bad thing. For many, many years, my fellow co-chairman and I, Marv Levin, met every single Saturday, 4 to 5 hours, doing long-term strategic planning, coming up with ideas and all. And some of my friends may have felt we were workaholics, but I felt we were having fun and playing. Work is a 4-letter word, but so is play. So a lot of it's just one's attitude and how one approaches work and play.
Is there a way to identify that peaceful person, that potential employee that is going to have the right kind of attitude?
Well, we use psychologists fairly extensively, both for the employee's benefit, if they're having any type of emotional or psychological problems, and who doesn't, and also as a screening device to make certain that the person being considered for a role would fit into our organization and with the manager of that particular department. Because a person might have very fine characteristics, but if we felt there would be significant conflicts that were very difficult to reconcile, we might not want that person in that particular department.
You are involved in a number of peace organizations.
Yes.
Joan Margalith, our producer and Director of Public Affairs here at KCBS, has mentioned on a number of occasions that the selling of the peace movement is often done with violent images, the mushroom cloud,
yes.
to sell peace. Do you have a thought on that?
Well, I think sometimes that's effective in getting people's attention, but it can be overdone, obviously, in a hurry. I am working with a group of business people. In fact, I'm a national director of it, Business Executives for National Security, and we are attempting to get eventually tens of thousands of business people involved in the peace efforts. And the organization is growing very rapidly with a large number of Fortune 500 types of CEOs involved, former members of the Pentagon, people that you would be very surprised to see involved in efforts to really reduce the risk of nuclear annihilation.
So do you think that in the days and weeks ahead that we're going to see a new approach to the peace movement, a new, it sounds belittling, but a new publicity campaign?
Well, publicity is a part of it, Charlie, but it's a lot more than that. I think that we need to get more involvement from people that have not historically been a factor. We need more involvement from our senior citizens, more involvements from the people that are classified as sociologically successful, the physicians, the dentists, the architects, the attorneys, business executives. We have to make it okay for them to be involved in these kinds of efforts. It's not that we don't still need the activists, we do, but I think we have to get Middle America much more involved and more aware of the problems that we face as a species, as a country and as a species, and I think that change is really occurring, and rather rapidly.
Is it a question of overcoming apathy in Middle America? Are people satisfied and content with the fact that we haven't been involved in a worldwide war for a number of years now? Do they tend to forget?
I think that's part of it. It reminds me of the man that was throwing paper all over the street, and the policeman finally came up and said, "Sir, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm keeping the tigers away." And the policeman said, "Well, there are no tigers here." And the man said, "See, it's working." Well, I think there's a little bit of this, that we assume as a nation, because we've not had a nuclear war with Russia or with anyone else in a long, long time, that somehow this isn't a problem anymore. The truth is just the opposite. We are embarked on a very dangerous course right now, and it's time that all of us start being numbed or dumbed about this position and to do something about it.
One of the difficulties that a number of people have in getting involved in the peace movement is a feeling of helplessness.
Yes.
That decisions are made by top-level government officials of this country and other countries, and it really, whatever I think personally, doesn't really matter a whole hill of beans. I can wave a flag or be in a march or write to my congressperson, and it really doesn't matter that much.
Well, if enough of us did that, it would matter. This is still a democracy, but I think one of the things that people must do is both do what they can and feel comfortable with individually, but also get involved in some group. I mentioned BENS, Business Executives for National Security, as an example, but there are many other organizations that one can affiliate with. So that way you do get some positive feedback as the numbers grow and you develop more communication within that peer group. Ideas can form. I am a tremendous believer in the creativity of the American people and people in general. And if you get people involved that are bright and successful in other areas, I think some of their ideas will in fact make a difference. I've been back to Washington several times. I've met a number of people in Congress, and I find they will listen. They want to listen. They recognize the limitations of their own knowledge, and I think it's just up to us, each of us, to get over the apathy, the indifference, the numbness, and get involved.
How do you respond to those individuals who feel that the ideas that you espouse are contrary to capitalism, the basic economic structure of our society?
Well, sometimes people in business have made that suggestion, but I point out that our business has been around a long time. Every year has been more profitable in the conventional sense than the year before. We have very low turnover of people. Our reputation is outstanding. We have over 200,000 investors and no lawsuits pending against us. And so that the very fact that we've been able to operate this way in a capitalistic society would indicate that it in fact does work. I find nothing that I am doing contrary to the very best of American historical traditions and ideals.
Are you ever frustrated?
Of course.
Are you frustrated by the inability of the system to catch on, for other companies to take the Enlightened road?
Well, at times, Charlie, but I notice changes. I'm involved with one organization, as an example, where we meet once a month. It's all CEOs of various medium-sized organizations here in California, and I've noticed enormous changes in almost all of those people in the last 5-6 years. An actual softening, a more awareness of a need to be more collaborative, to listen better, to do the things that I think are all appropriate for their own best interest, as well as their employees, their shareholders, and the community at large.
You used the word softening several times in our discussion in a positive sense, and usually it's thought of as softening as a weakness and a liability.
Well, I think of it as a very positive thing, Charlie. I'm a fairly large man, as you observed. I'm 6'5" and about 235 pounds, so that I've observed that I get more done and more accomplished if I can take away any negative feelings that my size creates. And I think that being a little softer in voice and in manner gets a lot more accomplished than yelling at people or being very aggressive or assertive. And I think that a lot of my colleagues feel the same way.
This is Infinity. Remember to keep your mind open and listen to your heart. I'm Charlie Seraphin. Thank you for listening.